Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this launch of Narratives from Piyamit, Life Stories from the End of the Revolution, by Jason Ng Si Chia and Murray Hunter. My name is Jason S. Ganesan, and I'll be your moderator for the day. I was very excited when this book came out. Coincidentally, I had been reading an old article on what is known as the Second Communist Insurgency, Second Emergency, when I saw that Garab Daya had announced the publication of this book. We know that the history of the anti-colonial struggle in general and the outsized role that the Communist Party of Malaya, CPM, one of the earliest parties in the country, played in the development of local politics is deliberately obscured, especially in sejarah textbooks. But even then, compared to what we do know about the Malayan emergency from 1948 to 1960, the second communist insurgency from 1968 to 1989 seems almost lost to time. Large chunks of our history remain amorphous, and I think that this has led some of us to preemptively limit our imagination and see ourselves as having always been docile, fundamentally incapable of radical action. It is for this reason that reading Narratives from Piyamit, for me, was a surreal experience. It seems almost impossible that as recently as the early to mid 1970s, as university students were marching in Kuala Lumpur, other young women and men were leaving their lives behind to take up arms along the Thai border, with little else but a dream of seeing a liberated Malaysia. Narratives from Piyamit tells the stories of 12 of these young women and men who left the comfort of their homes to join the communist movement against the backdrop of the May 13 racial riots and the new economic policy, NEP or EEB, and who now call the friendship villages in southern Thailand home. Okay, so let us begin today's event by introducing the two authors. So with me here is Jason Ng Si Chia, who is an assistant professor at New Era University College, specializing in East and Southeast Asian history. He is interested in historical memory and oral narratives, especially from critical turning points in history. His other publications include the paper Nostalgia and Memory, Remembering the Malayan Communist Revolution in the Online Age, on the Internet becoming a new stage for retired Malayan communists to present their side of history, and his thesis, Silenced Revolutionaries, Challenging the Received View of Malaya's Revolutionary Past, which reinterprets and revises the current established history of Malayan communism. And on Zoom, we have Murray Hunter, who has been involved in Asia Pacific business for the last 30 years as an entrepreneur, consultant, academic, and researcher. Murray was a former professor at University Malaysia Perlis and Prince of Songkhla University, Thailand, and his writing can be found on his Substack and on Free Malaysia Today. His Dark Forces Changing Malaysia, co-written with Lim Tek Gi, is also published by Garab Daya. Should we have a round of applause for our authors? Okay, so Jason and Murray, I'm just going to run through the questions. So these questions are open. You can both jump in if you want. If not, then I'll just move on to the next question. So the first one, just to begin, just to give the audience, this is preliminary question, just to give the audience an idea of what we're talking about. Can you explain the distinction between joining the Malayan National Liberation Army, or MNLA henceforth, and becoming a full member of CPM?
You want me to jump in, Murray? Yeah, you're silenced. You're muted. Okay. Here's the thing though, the nomenclature here is a bit confusing, so I have to give you a bit background. When we talk about the MNLA, the National Liberation Army, it refers to Chin Peng's central faction. You see, there's a split post 69. The group that we studied in Piyamit are the ones they call themselves the People's Liberation Army. So which is very little known. A lot of people didn't know. If you read Chinese sources, you'll see the name. So that's one thing. Many scholars, especially in the West, and also the journalists tend to conflate both of them. Confuse both.
Yeah. So everyone in this book is not. They weren't joining the MNLA. They were joining the People's Liberation Army.
Yeah, the MPLA. These were the ones we call probably the last generation of guerrillas. These are the ones who were not subscribing to communism from the beginning. They were student activists, labor activists, who felt that they need to address some injustices in Malaysian society, and ended up the hills, as we use the term, when they went up to Betong and Thailand, out of desperation.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were never hardcore communists, as what many scholars have claimed and has continued to claim. In fact, Murray, please jump in if you have any details to add in. Um, they were, how to say, yes, they were influenced by, for example, the old Labour Party, which was banned post May 13th. So, and then there were also individuals who were very angry with how Chinese vernacular schools, especially Chinese high schools, were forced to realign with the national syllabus, and they felt that were destroying mother tongue education. So they felt that they had to make a stand, and when they do that, guess what? Special branch, police, harassing them and all that. So when some of them were on the run because they felt that they done nothing wrong. If you read the book, you will notice a lot of narratives will tell you that they felt they were they were on the right side of history, but yet the authorities were hunting them. And when that happens, they were, how to say, convinced by friends who had contacts or a little bit of contacts with this hidden group up in Betong who may offer sanctuary. So that's how they ended up there.
Okay. Murray, you want to add anything?
No, that's a great answer. Thanks, Jason.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to. I mean, the next question is related because you call them idealistically displaced youths, and so they were disillusioned by May 13, NEP, and the restructuring of Chinese schools, which all happened in the wake of in the aftermath of May 13. So they went on to gather in formal and informal organizations. And can you describe like what some of these organizations were and how they were embedded in society? Oh, I mean, like sort of building on what you said earlier, like how do you go from disillusioned youth to ending up in the hills? What would be the normal process?
Keep in mind that many of them in the 60s and 70s, the kind of youth mentality is very different from today. These were a generation where, if you were from a certain social economic group, you would feel that the only way to get things done is not to wait for the government, but to organize, And there's no fixed structure. It's not like, oh, somebody came out and organized. It could be just like formal gathering. As we wrote in our book, they could be just gathering in somebody's house, go to kopitiam, talking, and then they get more and more excited. They say, hey, why don't we do this? Hey, why don't we do that? And maybe some of them have some contacts with people who have experience in organizing, activities. So they start to get organized, but it was not a top-down or externally directed. It's more like impromptu, on the spot thing. And some of them may have been involved since high school, like student activism, especially when it comes to the Chinese schools, right? So they get together and all that. And sometimes a friend of them who may know a friend who knows a friend who was an underground member of MCP. We talk about the Liberation Front and the Liberation League, right? If you read the book, uh, these people may have influenced them a little bit by giving them a little help here and there, but not necessarily directed by the now retreated Communist Party, all factions. I'm talking about when I say the Communist Party, I'm talking about all factions of the Betong. So there was never like, a direct line coming down. It was impromptu, and to sort of jump ahead, when they start organizing, you start printing things like pamphlets, you start giving speeches, you start doing cultural activities, and you start spreading ideas. Guess what? You attract the police.
Yeah.
Given that emergency ended in 1960, it doesn't mean the what you call the cops are not looking out for you. And the barbed wires, I could be wrong, and maybe Prof can correct me. The barbed wires to the new villages were probably removed by the 70s. So it's very new. The idea is very new. So when you start gathering, remember, we used to have this law when Mahathir was in power, no more than 3%.
Yeah.
So these things go on, and when you start gathering, you got special branch people looking at you, and you read the book, you will see some of them saying, "I got followed." There'll be somebody on bicycles looking after me, and then And then we have friends of friends and tell you, hey, guess what? Somebody's been coming to your house. So without recourse, they eat. And there are some books out there who talks about this same thing, similar to what the people we interviewed. They would go to places to hide. They go to Batu caves, villages, go to Malacca. There's one lady who's been traveling around for a few years, working odd jobs, until finally she found a contact and said, "Do you want to go up the hills?"
Okay, okay.
It's like if I stay here, either I keep running, or I go up there and protected by armed group. Might as well. This is why I said they were pushed to the point where they can't live like this forever. And I was like, might as well just take a chance. Yeah.
Why was it important for you to tell these stories of the, I guess, second wave of recruits?
I guess as a historian, maybe it's a pet peeve of mine. I find gaps in history, and I noticed that whenever we talk about the history of the leftist movement, and it always involves the communists, right? And then everybody talks about the MPAJA, talks about the emergency, talks about all that. But then, if you read the history, they ended up the fighting in '89. But yet, what happened after 1860 to '89? There's a huge gap. If you look closer, oh, it's May 13. Then after May 13, then what happened, right? And then when you look at pictures of people who, sort of the returnees who were retired, they were young people. They were not the same people who were fighting the British in 48 to 60. It's impossible. Then where do they come from? You start asking questions. You start finding out. Then you're like, oh, there are people going up the hills all the time. It's like, so who are these people? Nobody talks about them. But you do find news articles talking about, oh, the army, the Malaysian army, engaged in some guerrillas in some Gunung Tahan area, bombarded them, killed how many, and all that stuff. Like, where do these people come from? But yet, we don't hear about it because we are not under like strict emergency restrictions. In 48 to 60, there was not so many home guards. There are army units around, but there's never a sense of like war footing in Malaysia. You don't hear that. I asked of my father's generation because I was born after that, and they said there's don't really much people talk about this. Oh, the hills, don't go up the hills. There are mountain people up there. Who are the mountain people? The communists. Yeah. Who are these people? Where do they come from? So, as a scholar, as I was doing my tertiary education, I started digging up more and more these stories, and nobody talks about these people. Then somehow over the years, I found there's linkages to leftist movement, the labor movements in the 60s and 70s. And then came the question. Everybody talks about May 13th, but what happened after May 13th? Right? And then I found, as I did my initial master's and my PhD, I talked to the people in the Peace Village, which is separate faction. They told me that they have recruits coming in. Right? Who are these recruits? As young as 14, which is sort of playing at the edge of the age limit they would take people. But again, where do they come from? Then the question I asked is, was May 13 responsible for pushing this use?
Okay.
And nobody could answer that until I managed to make contact with a lot of these veterans, these old cadres, and they start telling me stories. And these things were never documented. Granted that they do publish their own books, but they were in Mandarin, and hardly anybody actually read them. In fact, I have presented some of my arguments in conferences overseas, and you will notice that in the West, most of them can't read Mandarin or refuse to read. And so they don't know these books exist. And like, oh wow, where did you get them? I buy them. And they'll be like, how? Buy from their own publishers. Then they ask me, you mean they write? Think about the question.
Yeah.
Do you mean they write? I say, sure they do. They just don't write English. And that blew their minds. But when you read, this is their narrative. But when I look around for other scholarly works, everybody talks about the victory over them, talk about their surrender, talk about how the war ended with government winning. You don't hear stories like what made these people join the movement? What made them go up the hill to repeat that phrase we use in the book? Yeah. Maybe Mary, can you hear us? You want to add something, Mary? Yeah, you're muted. You're muted.
No, yeah, you go on. That's great summary.
Do you want me to ask the question again, Murray?
Yes, I didn't hear it actually.
Yeah, so why was it important for you to tell these stories? The stories that are contained, the narratives are contained in, the stories in Narratives from Piyamit.
Okay, I'd like first to thank Pat Chong for putting on the event, and Jason, the two Jasons up there. And good afternoon to the audience. I can't quite see at the moment, but later I'll probably see. I take a very different perspective on the whys and how we did the book. My history starts at about 210. So before the year 210, I didn't have much exposure, only knowing that there was a Communist Party of Malaya, and then Malaysia. And I went to see the pyramid, the Friendship Village, in Sadal first, because I used to pass it on my bike. I used to ride up to Khao Nang Kang, and I thought one day I'll go and have a look. So I had a friend from UUM. I said, let's drive up and have a look and see what these tunnels are all about. So we drove up and we found this tunnel complex and museum, and wow, very impressive, very interesting. Learned a lot of things, and we happened to meet the boss there, Mr. Liang. So we had a cup of coffee with him, and he told us that the cadres now are aging, and they're living in this community, and many of them felt that their life was for nothing, that they've done all the things that they did, and there's no meaning. And I thought, and I said, that's certainly not true. All lives have meaning. And we discussed the possibility of interviewing and writing their stories. And I went back to the people at Hadjai University, where I did some work with, and Prince Songkla University. No one was really interested, because this is ancient history as far as any Gen Z, or there wasn't Gen Z people, millennial people are not interested in such things. They're interested in community issues. And the people who had the ability to work on such a project, I didn't know, it couldn't exist. So years went on, I retired, COVID came, and then Dr. Lim Tek Gi and myself wrote the two books that Pat Chong published, and that was in 2022. And when I came down to KL, which I hadn't been to for many, many years, I said, is there anybody who's interested in doing a narrative and interviewing the old cadres, and turning this into some sort of book that the general public could read and understand their personal stories, because that's what they wanted to communicate. And bingo, Jason comes along, and he did his PhD on the historical aspect of it, and was very enthusiastic. So I went back to Bethel, because I went to Bethel every couple of months for sports. So I went up to see the people in Bethel, and they were very enthusiastic about it. So I think I rang Jason on the spot, and Jason spoke to the son of the leader there, and we arranged a date and a time, and we went up and we started interviewing them, and then we found this problem and that problem, and the bottom line was this. one guy from Malaysia and one Masali. Can we trust these people? So it took us, I think, 2 visits before we could get their trust. And I think that's a very important issue with researchers. You just can't jump in and do such a project. It takes a lot of time to get the trust. It was lucky my partner was there because she could speak Thai, and then we could start communicating on a lot of different levels. And we're actually doing what they want, not what we want. And to my mind, at my age, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to facilitate this project and get what we have today out, so you can read their personal stories. Then we went and put in an introduction, and that's why I've been very quiet, because that's Jason's area. Jason's a historian, and without having a context, the interviews are meaningless. And then I did some work for the Royal Thai Army on looking at community attitudes towards the insurgency, and we use narrative. Or we propose the use of narrative to go in and interview villagers and find out their concerns, their worries, their aspirations. And we saw this as a very valuable tool. So I spent a lot of time with a tour of duty with the army, looking at such issues. But that went on when the 4th Army commander changed, so the project just went dead. So there was a grounding of methodology, and I learned a lot of this methodology from my years at Swinburne University. Our aim was to package up all those 12 interviews into what would it be like to have been there? What were the meanings? What were their aspirations? Why did they wake up in the morning to do what they did, going through the jungle and carting 50-kilo, rucksacks and bags through the fields? And I tried to take Jason, to see what it would have looked like. And I think none of us could have survived that. So the question that I learned as an academic that a lot of people would disagree with, the first question I want to answer is, what does it feel to be here? And that's what the second part of the book after the interviews tried to answer, is what did it really feel like to be there? What type of community attitudes and culture did they have? And that still existed today, only in a new form, and it regenerated and went through a transformation and went from a military platoon into a all-out agro-eco tourism operation. But to the cadres, and I don't want to put words into their mouths, they still see themselves with the same organization, with the same people, doing the tasks that they need to do to progress their life and their society. Hello, you can still hear me?
Yes. Murray, can you explain a bit? When you say they maintain some of that life now, can you elaborate on that?
Maintain their life? Well, you have to look at the artifacts. They still have rosters. They still have routines. They have a patriarchy. They have symbols of the past and symbols of the future in hope. And they're doing the same thing. except the objectives are different.
Okay. This is a question for both of you. So you did all these interviews, and this was around what year? 20 before the pandemic. When did you guys get started?
Well, we started 2023. We spent the
Oh, okay,
entire
okay,
year.
all right, okay. So, to you personally, are there any particular narratives? Yeah.
It's me and Mary. We have different stories. I think
Yeah.
one particular story that I can't always forget is the one with this 14-year-old girl. I don't want to spoil it because then you won't read the book. She comes from a well-to-do family, financially, and the father has some social standing among the Chinese. She's not your classical poverty-stricken youth looking for a way out and all that. The best part of all, she's not educated in the Chinese school system. She speaks Malay. She speaks Hakka at home, but she's Malay. And then you have this 14-year-old girl impressed by, which we assume was an agent of the underground, who told her about, liberation of the people and all that. Given that after independence, the Communist Party's goal was to liberate the people, not liberate the nation. The nation is already independent, but the people are still trapped in this whole system. So she was so convinced, and by what she was being shared with, and she saw how around her, how poverty was affecting everyone, not just the Chinese. She felt that she has to do something. This is youth, 14-year-old girl, we call the apple of her father's eye, who's always been chaperoned and somebody would follow her and all that. And suddenly decided one day, I'm going to go out and be a guerrilla. And I don't speak a word of Chinese. That would really impress me, I'll say. So you read the story and you find out. Now, sorry, you say one, right? Actually, it's another one. In the book, we interviewed one of the rare Indians or Tamils who joined the movement. And again, this is a man who only educated to Form 2 from Kamunting. Doesn't speak a word of Mandarin. I was so impressed by the discipline and the kind of attitude the guerrilla army had, decided to say, take me with you. And then his journey to becoming, a supporter of the cause and a soldier for the cause is something that fascinates me. So what this this man named Sheng Rong, the Tamil guerrilla, tells you that he felt that the things that at least the fact that the army that he joined, the People's Liberation Army, gave him a purpose and is universal. So you see, he may not be the rare ones, but he do subscribe to it. And when you talk to him, he has no regrets, and that really impressed me. So, Murray.
Yeah. What about you, Maria? Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay. How old was this Shenrong?
Today?
When he was no. When he signed up.
I think he was in his early 20s, or no older than 22.
Yeah, because like reading the book, it just feels so mind blowing. Because being very, because I live in this day and age, but like it's almost like it's so impossible to think of now. And obviously it's not really impossible, but it just seems so like it just seems like this happened in a slightly different world, and it's actually not that long ago. If you think about my eldest brother was born in 1925, so it's actually not that long ago.
Well, yeah, we live in the 21st century. We have all the comforts and all that. In the 70s, it may not be as advanced, but it's definitely more advanced than the 40s. But many of them come from semi-comfortable families. Of course, there are many come from the villages and all that. What made someone abandon their sometimes wife and child. Mostly they are youths actually. Most of them are unmarried. A few of them were married. To basically, go up to a prehistoric forest, which the Malaysian forest is not the typical new forest. It's actually prehistoric, it's millions of years old. And to traverse that takes a small, not small, no small amount of courage. You have to survive the environment, survive animals, survive your will. When you're surrounded by dense forests, the only people you can trust are the people in front and back of you, and also you will become your own worst enemies because you start have doubts. And I've gone to Templar Park for camping when in my youth, and when surrounded by all this green, and you're thinking I'm away from civilization, and not the first time I would think, what if I got lost? But these are people who not only able to traverse this forest for months to deliver a piece of mail or to deliver crucial supplies to some unit out there, braving animals and attacks, bullets and bombs. That's unthinkable. I think today, if you want somebody to suffer, you take away their smartphones, right? In those days, they got nothing to lose. There's a public phone, but they just, I mean, for family linkage. They value family. If you read the book, they talk about family, and this book is about found family too. If you look carefully, so that really tells you something. These are not like faceless combatants. These are people with real aspiration. And so, sorry, I gave you a roundabout answer. It's unthinkable. Even today, I think if any of us, let's say, okay, well, how about let's go mountain climbing in Lake Genie? I think nobody wants to go with me, right?
Yeah, I edited a book recently. It's on when they discovered the mass graves in Wang Kelian, and then the journalist who went up, and he was already in his 60s, and he described like at every step of the way he felt like, okay, this is it, I'm gonna die. This is it, I'm gonna die. And it's and that's now, and then to imagine like prehistoric forests back then, and it's like these are people with no experience of. They weren't inclined to do this already. These are kids from. Some of them from KL.
I would say 90% of people there are city slickers, right? Meaning city people. They're urbanite. So yeah, you're right. They may be able to work blue collar jobs, but they are still city people.
Yeah.
They're not from the villages, right? Yeah.
Maria, are you back?
You're muted.
Yes, I'm back.
Just want to check with you. Are there any of the 12 narratives that stick out to you particularly?
No, because I worked on merging them. I looked at the sum of the narratives. I went through them, of course, but my work was just to try and get them together so I could create this cultural matrix. So they were the revelations. The individual narratives were really related to the stories that Jason's been telling you. But the striking thing were a lot of paradoxes. They're so-called Marxist, but very much into Taoism and animism, which is a great paradox. Their kinsmanship, comradely, they were the things that I grew to respect. So there weren't any lines or stories that stuck out. I heard all the stories. I remember these were going on in Mandarin. I only saw the translations. I was there during the interviews, and I could hear the emotion. And it took me months to link the emotion to the actual stories. So the data that I could look at and interpret was the holistic culture of the organization. And that's what I found very impressive, that it could last such a long time and continue. And that wasn't the same in other villages, because we found this very strange. So we took a couple of days and we went to where I think every other village except for one. And we found them to be vastly different in stark contrast.
Okay, Murray, I want to go back to something you said earlier about how they are remembered or not back home. How can you elaborate on how they feel about that?
With great humility. I don't believe there are anybody who felt angry or sour. The few that said things in the interviews, I remember at the time, they more or less wished all the best for Malaysia, which is in stark contrast to the reasons they gave for leaving. So that's what I found. There wasn't bitterness that they had to upright themselves from their life in Kuala Lumpur and other parts of Malaysia and change their life completely. So as the Masali says, they let bygones be bygones, and hope for the best. And they weren't very political. They didn't seem to be terribly interested in the daily politics of Malaysia, because remember, most of them are Thai citizens now. If not all of them, they were Thai citizens. So in Thailand, it doesn't matter what race you are, what ethnic group you are, what religion you are, all Thai citizens are what they call Kun Thai. So they have a completely different view. So when they look back of what happened in Malaysia, they just say very quietly, we wish and we hope for Malaysia all the best.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to say on like how they feel that they are remembered or not remembered?
Well, I think Murray answered most of it, and completely that's what we felt at that time. They do felt a little bit. There's no regrets. Let's not make it clear. They do feel disappointed. At least the ones we talked to, they're disappointed that there was no ultimate victory for them, and they were disappointed that Malaysia did not become better despite what they did. So that's why they wish that we wish the best for Malaysia. In fact, one of them off the record says, if only Malaysia would be like Thailand, kind of a greater nation, If Thailand can have Kun Thai, why can't we have something similar? So their disappointment was on not able to achieve something. I mean, keep this in mind. If you read the book, you will notice they will say some things like, "Oh, we never expect to survive," but to live, to tell the tale, is also a kind of victory for them.
Yeah.
And which is why they were keen to talk to us once we got their trust. They were so that's one thing we need to be aware of. And as Marie says, I just want to reinforce this part. They were never political. Never once they talked to us about politics. They would just talk about why they did what they did. They don't talk about what they wish for the future. Nothing political. Absolutely none. So how do you quantify something like that? How do you explain that? The only way is to read, to understand their life stories. So as a historian, Marie has a different approach, but we complement each other. We try to produce this picture telling you that the story is so nuanced. You can't quantify it in pigeonhole in one story, which is what many scholars are doing currently. So we hope to change the status quo.
Yeah, because I mean, So, like, I guess that leads on to the next question. So, like, if you read, like, say, the biographies of the 10th Regiment, there's this sort of gap. There's a lot of stuff happening before 1948, after 1948, and then they talk about 1989. And so you just really don't get a sense of like what went on during the second communist insurgency, and why do you think that is generally okay? I mean, like you say, scholars maybe yeah they can't read some of the primary texts in Mandarin and all that, but there's this, but still, I mean, it's a really really important thing. I mean, like, and we just don't know a lot about it. There's just so little written about it, and there's like my understanding of it was like faulty only after reading a book. I thought it was like okay, like maybe CPM did everything or like or whatever, and I couldn't understand the nuances you're talking about. So why do you think that is?
I think it's been a long-standing problem that there's huge gaps when we talk about modern Malaysian history. And it has to do with the whole nation building exercise, which I'm not going to go into. There are parts of it which are not so glorious. Everybody likes to have a national myth that says how great it is. Although over the years, many countries in the world were trying to come to terms with this and try to sort of acknowledge all that. You notice how Australia have all this, give thanks to the elders of this land and all that stuff, because they try to come to terms with it. Back then it was like, no, we took this land fair and square, nothing to talk about. And you have this epiphany, right? Not in Malaysia, because I guess Malaysia is still very young, relatively speaking, and the nation building is still continuing. We have struggles about identity, about what makes Malaysia Malaysia, and all that. So when it comes to a very controversial history like the communist movement, right? And you asked about the 10th Regiment. 10th Regiment belongs to the central faction, right? They have a gap because I wouldn't say they have nothing to talk about, but they would want to, how to say, they have to come to terms with it first. I can't speak for that. I mean, granted that it's fascinating how the movement started, with Abdullah Sidi and all that from Raoult, all the movements and all that. But why there's a gap is a tough question. You say, well, as you pointed out, most people don't read the Mandarin text, so they don't know the primary documents. But what about the Malay documents? It's pretty available.
Yeah.
Why there was no talk about? I think there is something that people have to come to terms. I'm sure during your sejarah tingkatan days, you'll be like, whoa, this is only one paragraph, right? Like, what's going on? Why the gap of 30 years and then there's only one paragraph? Doesn't make sense. What happened then? Do we don't know? Or we don't want to know? Right? So that's a question we have to ask, right? And when me and Mary were up there, we found out that we have this huge trove of history, and they're still alive. Or most of them were alive when we started the project. They are still living and breathing, and they're still talking. But the silence is deafening, right? What we are talking about is nothing to do with politics, but why people do what they want to do. Right? You want to call it anthropological, fine. It's a little bit more than that. Going back to the 10th Regiment, what's the missing gap? Why it's impossible that from 1960 to 89 they are not doing anything, right? They're still there. If you talk to some of them, they'll say, "Oh, we were fighting, we were fighting." But if you dig deeper to the newspaper clippings, there are traces here and there. But then you only read about them when you go read the individual memoirs and autobiographies from the 10th Regiment, right? Even recently, I think you have a book about Arang Asli, right?
Yeah.
Comrade, what's his name? I forgot what's his name. I have the book. Why nobody talks about Orang Asli? The Orang Asli fought for both sides.
Yeah.
Then again, you see another gap. So you see, the gaps are there, and when we try to talk about them, people seem to be afraid. What are we afraid of? So, this is a roundabout way of saying, I'm more interested in historical knowledge than saying who's right and wrong. So, why can't we just have a reconciliation of this history? Right? That's why this project is important, because we want to fill in the gaps. Murray, you have something you want to add? Yeah. Different point of view. You're muted again.
Yes, yeah, I agree with you. But when I was there and the time I have been there, I've been there many days, and their orientation is not towards the past. Their orientation is towards here and now and the future. And if you look around Pyramid, if you ever have the opportunity to go there and spend a few hours, not just through the tunnel, but have a look at their durian plantation, their homestay, their restaurant, their coffee shop, the grounds. There's a great sense of pride. And their history also has a sense of pride. But that's a past. To me, the rhythms, the cloth rhythms around the trees, the durian trees that you could see on the hills, that's their future. And they're working as a collective, as a group, to turn that whole area into something productive and something that can be passed on to the next generation. So the other thing you can see there is the generational change. So we're going from the first generation into the second generation now. And that's very interesting because they're bringing their children up the same way, with the same ethics and morals that they have inside their community. So that impressed me. And they were the things that I found very fulfilling out of the project. Not so much the history.
Okay, but so the interviewees were like, they should be in their 70s now, right? Or 60s. So their kids would be 20s. Murray, so as much as you say like they want to focus on the here and now and not the past, are there any like active acts of remembering, like transferring the history? I mean, besides the books they've written, like transferring the history of what they've done to their kids, for instance, is it important to them, like that the kids know who they are, how this community came about?
Not extremely detailed. Okay. I do talk to some of them. They're like, oh, I know my dad was fighting in guerrillas, but what he actually did, I don't know.
Okay.
But they do notice that they have acts of commemorations on every certain days.
Okay.
In a year, like, the day they started the revolution, the day they return from, well, going down the hill, which is a metaphor for putting down their arms. And then they also celebrate things like the Thai King's birthday, Thai New Year, and all that. So they have different acts of commemoration for them, especially surrounding their activities. And the same goes with those who return to Malaysia. They have this at one in June when they celebrate the beginning of the anti-British War and all that. So they have one,
Yeah.
So they do, but when it comes to the youth, they don't really know. And I don't like what Barry says is true. They look forward to the future. They are very progressive in this regard. Okay, that the children doesn't have to bear their sins. We are moving forward. It's good to let the children know that, oh, I was in the war, but not necessarily like, oh, you have to remember what I sacrificed. No, that's not the point. The point is, I fought the good fight. Here I am. I built this family for you. I'm going to leave all this for you when I'm gone. Just remember that I did all this for you and for the future. So I think that's the message they want to do. They look here and now, as Mary says, but they have their feet planted on the present, the future. But the commemoration is for their own comrades, and that's when me and Mary come in. We try to record this, to find the lack of a better term, and to ensure that this is not a something that's easily forgotten. Not to do anything else, but put this in its rightful place in Malaysian history. That's all it is.
Okay. So this is kind of like the final question. I mean, unless you want to add on anything, but I okay. So the young women and men who traveled to the border, they had a dream of liberation. Did they express to you what liberation would entail? What would be their vision of a liberated people? I mean, because you said it's not so much liberated Malaysia as much as a liberated people for Malaysians to be liberated, and what would that mean to them?
No, that's pretty tough. I think I'll try this, Mary. Then you jump in, all right? Based on the people we talk to, liberation means different thing to different people.
Yeah.
Mostly they talk about alleviating the poor. They felt that the government in the 70s, especially after the NEP, was not helping. The people remains poor. They don't see any uplifting of the poor. There was no race mentioned, keeping that in mind.
Okay.
No race mentioned, except for a few who
Yeah.
were particularly concerned about the Chinese. But most of them, and some of them were not in the book, told us that it was all about everybody, uplifting everybody. We are one nation. We are Malaysians. But those who were particularly angry with NEP were more towards saying that, why the Chinese were excluded to this whole uplifting process, right? So liberation means to break away from the old system, which to them is a continuation of what the British left behind. And to some, liberation means they don't have to be tied to the old ways of thinking, which was poorly defined, I must admit. They didn't really go into deep what's that. They just said that, why can't we express what we want to express? Why can't we fight for better worker rights? That is where those who are subscribing to the labor movement were like, why can't workers have better rights, better pay, treated better, And those who fought for Chinese vernacular education was like, why can't the Chinese schools be allowed to operate without hindrance? After all, aren't we Malaysians? Aren't we supposed to be accepting of all aspects of culture and language and all that? What they come? Some would say liberation is basically, not let the old traditions still tie down. We should be a progressive nation. Of course, their point of view of what's a progressive nation differs person to person. I can't say what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
So that's the gist of it. What about you, Murray? What did you see?
I saw it as a personal liberation. I saw their travels from Kuala Lumpur to Betong as a search for meaning. And many of them did not really know where they're going to end up. Maybe they had an idea, but they weren't sure. It could have been a big temple. It could have been a big mosque. It could have been a big church. It could have been a big factory. They were heading somewhere on a sense of adventure that gave them the hope that they would maybe find something better than what they were experiencing where they were in Malaysia. So they took the plunge. And when they got there, they found meaning of camaraderie, meaning of a mission greater than themselves. So suddenly they're working in an organization that is much more than them, with common values, common beliefs, common assumptions, and that gave them peace. That gave them peace of mind. And I see now that after 1986 and 1989, the peace accords, they're still living in that psychological state, and through the group that they have there, that there's no difference to what they're doing today than what they were doing 30 years ago. It's just that the mission has changed. And that's why where I am in parts of southern Thailand, you'll see some of them left and went to the towns, and they opened up shops and they traded. And I know them; they're personal friends, and they wanted to do something different. They wanted to be entrepreneurs, but this group that stayed, social entrepreneurship became the new mission of their what was left of the platoon, and the group. And without meaning of life, if you try and live in a 6 foot by 6 foot room with no windows, you have none. If you're in a psychic prison where there's racial hate, lack of opportunity, there were a lot of reasons mentioned. We've been through them to get into an environment where you have trust. Of course, that trust was broken with the split, and that's another issue. And that brought a lot of animosity. There's probably more hurt and sense of betrayal in the internal split of the party than anything that happened in Malaysia. Because I remember in the interviews, they would talk a lot more about that issue and how they were hurt. And also going to Sadao, I've heard a lot of stories from the other side. So I think in the interviews I found, and everybody has a different perspective, it was a personal betrayal of trust that was the greatest threat, existential threat to the group. And that was their greatest fear, that somebody in their group would betray them. So they're the impressions I got.
Okay. I think that's a nice note to sort of end this segment on. I'm going to open it to the crowd. Anyone have any questions for Murray or Jason? So I know it's explained in the book. So as you're waiting for questions, you want to just briefly explain what Murray refers to, or Murray, do you want to explain what you refer to as the split? What you mean by the split? Sorry.
Jason's a historian here.
Okay. The split is much more complicated than most people thought, but let's just say that in the late 60s, right before May 13, there was a purge within the party. Back then, the Communist Party was only one. And it also, depending on who you ask, there were stories of infiltration by government agents. Some say it's Thai, some say it's Malaysian. I had people telling me stories of mass poisonings of the leadership group. And so it came to a decision that they had to purge and basically arrest, put on trial, and execute suspected members. Unfortunately, many of those were Batong-born guerrillas. Now, keep in mind that when the MCP retreated to the Thai borderlands, they also take recruits from communities around Batong, which is, these are the Batong community people. Some are Thai, some are Chinese, some are Malays. They are not necessarily all Malayans. I know the party is called Malayan, but some of them were not. So there was a decision that certain members who come from Batong were suspicion of being infiltrators. There was a purge. So a purge happened in stages, the late 60s. There was one near May 13, there's another one after May 13. So it ended up in 71, 72. I think the cadres will correct me, but I need to get the dates right. I'm still figuring it out. So it happened in 3 to 4 stages, depending who you ask. That shattered the party after the last purge. Basically, there were two units. What you look at the map, the 5th village, the one in Khao Nam Kang, that's where the 8th regiment was. They decided that we're not going to take this anymore. There was an order to kill so many people. They were list. They said, I'm not going to do this. The leadership decided that we're going to be independent. All right. At first, they didn't want to. They just want to resist the order. But this army discipline demands obedience. The only way to do was to go rogue. So that's what happened. And then a similar order was sent to the 2nd Area Forces of the 12th Regiment. You have to read the book to know the nuances, which is today where the Friendship Village is. So now they broke away around the same time. There was no agreement to do it at the same time. It just so happened, and each faction took away significant number of troops with them, and one became the Marxist-Leninist faction. Now call themselves the Revolutionary Front, and that's where the split happened. The Central faction still claims that they are still part of them, but in fact, they're not taking orders from Central faction, although they're still in contact. So I know it's complicated. In 1983, the two split factions merged to form a new party known as the Malaysian Communist Party. And this is a fact that people get confused. So, but after 1983, there were only two factions: the old party, the CPM, which is why I wrote it. We wrote it in a way to put CPM, and the MCP, which is the Malaysian Communist Party. So then it was the Malaysian Communist Party who reached an accord with the Thai government in 1987 to stop fighting, whereas Chin Peng, who was from the old party, made an agreement with both Thai and Malaysia in 1989 in Hat Yai Hotel to end the fighting for everybody. So that's the complete. So the split is basically a purge and a split and merging all that.
Okay. Any questions? Yeah, over there.
Hi, my name is Arman. I'm a student from the LSE doing anti-colonial resistance. And I thought your book, I've already read your book, and it's really great contribution to the literature. And I was really wondering, especially like talking about the split, and also talking about the meaning of liberation from a lot of the communists, about like how a lot of it comes from like colonial continuity, right? I was wondering if, on top of the obviously practical problems of the purge, if there was any theoretical splits between the CPM and MCP, in the sense that, so obviously the Communist Party of Malaya stayed Malayan because of their connection with the North Kalimantan movement. I was wondering if that choice of staying like Malaysia was a theoretical choice, or like some sort of like, I guess, further analytical split that the factions had. Yeah.
Okay. Sort of like, okay. That's quite a complicated question. First of all, no, it's okay. Sorry, I got it. First of all, the MCP and CPM both acknowledge and realize there were other communist movement and all that. They do acknowledge the North Kalimantan movement as a brother, or comrades, but they are not really cooperating or communicating much. They do know they exist. They are nothing to do with them. You see, both the grand old CPM and the later MCP were more focused on Peninsular Malaysia. They are not interested in East Malaysia. In fact, they do not consider the inclusion of Sabah Sarawak as something they would go for, because the Malaysian should be just Peninsula or Malaya. Which is why some of them would say, if you talk to those from the Peace Village, which is the Grand Old faction, they will tell you that Malaysia is a colonial construct because we are doing the same thing. We are colonizing Sabah Sarawak. That's their argument, not mine. Their words, not mine. So now, I hope that's a simply way to answer that. When you talk about theoretical split, I think you mean ideological split, right? There was none. Both the split of factions and the central faction believe in the same thing. They still thought that they are still fighting the same fight, which is to free Malaya, Peninsular Malaysia today, from colonialism. They believe that the government, again, their words, not my words, that the current government is still a colonial government. It's just a puppet of the British. They believe that. And so they believe that justifies their fighting. Although the idea of independence was taken away from them when Malaysia became independent in 57, right? They still believe that the people are still colonized, hence liberation for the people. This is why I'm saying I'm looking at the historical point of view. Now, the split faction, both the Revolutionary Front and the Marxist-Leninists believe that the central faction had lost their way. This is hence why they split. They say the purge is a sign that they've lost their way. And what Murray says, no, it was a betrayal. To order, somebody in the unit say, you have to kill this list of people. And one of the names that happens to be your best friend, how do you feel about that? Oh, I'm sorry, I have to kill you for the party. No, this is a found family for them, as I said. And so that, ideologically, the later Malaysian Communist Party, MCP, believed that they were the pure ones. Whereas another faction would argue that they were the pure ones. They were the ones true. So there was technically, from the outsider's point of view, there was never a difference. It's just a matter of who is speaking or what and how that. And the comrades can speak about that better than me. I'm an outsider looking at this, and all I can see is they see this whole war until 89 as a continuing colonial resistance, right? So that begs the question of, is Malaysia a post-colonial state? Which, as a PhD student, I'm sure you'll be facing that, right? Okay, so I'm going to stop there and go overboard.
Murray, do you want to add anything? I saw you raise your hand.
You're muted.
No, that's okay. That was something else. But no,
All right,
thanks,
okay.
Jason, for answering that.
Any other questions? Okay, so just as we're waiting for questions, yeah, I mean, like when you mention the found family as aspect, because they took in locals from Betong, and I mean that part of the book really stood out to me because these people didn't see. I mean, obviously they're not, and they knew that what they were liberating was not where they were. It's not where they're from, but there's this sense of internationalism which was so. I mean, I guess inspiring to read and to know that like people of this sort were being put on lists must have been such a huge betrayal. I mean, like the non-Malaysians being put on lists.
That's a very good question. I think me and Murray were wondering the same thing. Like, you're from Betong. Why are you wearing the uniform of a Malayan guerrilla army, right, or Malaysian guerrilla army, fighting for a place you've never even seen or fight before? And the short answer is, why not?
Yeah,
We're fighting the good fight. It's something righteous. We're helping our brothers, our sisters, our comrades. Isn't that how we should help each other? This is what you get in the book. You say, what's wrong with that? And so that really, I think many contemporary studies have never touched on that. It's like, why would somebody help them? I mean, but then again, if you look back in time, have you heard of the International Brigade? Right, the Czechoslovak battalion and all that. It existed. It existed. This whole internationalism, like you said. So, but to hear it from people who actually fought them, like, sure, why not? And I think it surprises us. It's like, we ask them, have you ever been to Malaysia? No. But you fight for them. Yeah. So that tells you something, doesn't it? Right?
yeah. I mean, I recently heard this. I was listening to a podcast, and it was this Arab American barista from whatever, and then he's now fighting with the Chin state against the junta in Myanmar, and it's like, and it's that kind of sense like, why not? These are my brothers, like we are all in one struggle, and it's a struggle for liberation, so why not? And it's really really inspiring to hear, and so I'm assuming that when you see people like that being put on lists, it must be so. You can read to find out more, but it must be it's so heartbreaking for whoever's in the camp, and especially with this sense of found family. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one question about the MPLA. Because you say that after 1970, because these members of the MPLA went up to the hills because of this NEP, right? Is not they're not happy with the government policy because what was the objectives of them? The MPLA. They wanted to overthrow the Malaysian government, or they just want to force the Malaysian government to change the policy.
Well, here's the thing, Ituan. When they went up the hill, they didn't know it was called MPLA. They just know they're just joining a guerrilla army, that's all. And they were not communists when they went up there. They were just idealistic views, you know. So when they went up there, they found out, especially after 71, they found out, oh, the army got renamed. We're now the People's Liberation Army. So sometimes they also call themselves the People's Army. So it depends on who you talk to. There's always the name change can be quite, so you have to keep track of it. But as for the objective, it's the same as the central faction. Overthrow the old government, establish a people's government. It's the same thing. So that's how they see it.
Marie, do you want to say anything?
That's a very interesting question. And I don't know if the data we collected actually answers that. Some people just wanted to run away from it. And I saw the whole thing as more of a retreat to get away from this repression where you know you're not going to be able to get an education, you know you're not going to be able to join society with the rules that were made in 1971 or whenever. So they fled. I don't think there was anything in their mind about overthrowing the government. It was more about they've had enough of this and they can't, they feel powerless. So they retreated. What they found that when they got there, and this is particularly more so in the later period, most of the sorties and the journeys they had to actually take some offensive action outside of Pyramid was really more of a training exercise than an exercise of terrorism or murder or attack. It's more something for the cadres to train for, to do, and come back. So it didn't have that objective of overthrowing the government. I think they knew, and I remember talking to one of the old cadres. I don't know if it was in the interview or outside the interview, that they knew damn well that they had no hope of doing that. But it was putting up the good fight that was important, and that's the impression I got.
Can I add that? Yeah, I mean, Mary, you're absolutely correct. You see, as recruits, their objective was not to overthrow the government. They only learned about the objective after they became a full-fledged member of the army. You don't become a party member when you join the army. You become a party member down the road. There's nothing. You have to read the book to know the difference. But they were, like Mary said, they were running away from this society they felt was unjust. That to fight for something better. How and what shape or form they don't know, but they subscribe to the fact that resistance. When they joined the army, they were told, okay, here's what our long-term goal is, and here's our short-term goal. And then what they found out is what Mary said. I just want to elaborate a little. Is that they do a lot of small missions, transportation, infiltration, passing information, buying supplies. Occasional ambush missions, nothing large scale, although they were told, oh, one day we will liberate Malaysia. How? We would overthrow the government. But as Marie says, and some of these people, they say, and I had the same conversation too, a bit separate from Marie, different time. We don't know how that's going to be achieved. We know we want to do it, but we don't know how it's going to happen. So far, we haven't managed to do as much as capture a town or a state. So we don't know, but we will fight on until something comes up. That's the gist of it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So if there are no other questions, well, I'll ask a general question. What do you hope that the readers will take away from this book?
I think readers should to read this book and realize that there are much more stories to be told about Malaysia's troubled past. I use the word troubled because it's not as clean and clear cut as it is. And the story of this 12, which is a drop in a bucket or drop in the ocean, so to speak, that there's so much has been lost over time. We should stop politicizing history, but look history as a history. There's nothing wrong with understanding us. We're only human, right? We make decisions. We, right or wrong, is beyond the scope of history, right? We should never attach labels saying, oh, this was good, bad, if you read Noam Chomsky's The Good War, he's actually trying, have you read the book?
No.
Yeah. Noam Chomsky wrote a book called The Good War, where he talks about how people perceive World War II as the good war because America won the war. And he tried to upturn the table on that. And a lot of people didn't really like that because it's like, why can't we celebrate something? It's like, let me put on a very crazy metaphor. Would you celebrate the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? But Americans would. Why? Oh, we bombed the hell of the enemy. We nuked them. Or atomized them, that's the term. But when you are the receiving end, oh, that's bad. That's bad. Why? Why people died? So when we start having this good, bad, black and white binary, you can't move forward as a nation. I mean, what's wrong with acknowledging that there were atrocities committed? What's wrong with that? So I find that I know I'm going up against the hill. And already I have people telling me like, why you want to write something like this? And it was like me and Mary were like, why not? We are telling the truth, and truth is a truth that matters. And I hope that if any of you read the book after today, and if you haven't read the book, have an open mind and try to understand that we are only humans, and humans make decisions. Right, wrong, good, bad, doesn't matter. We make decisions, we make choices. And learn to understand that we have so much more to look forward to. It's not a matter of win or lose. Yeah, it's beyond that. Mary, you want to add something?
Yes, I do. Okay, I'm back on. The first thing I feel very happy and relieved that I've fulfilled my promise to the cadres that I made almost 15 years ago. And I thought at a time I would never be able to do that. So in those terms, I'm very, very happy. And I'm happy that their stories are now part of the historical record, because most of them have been about politics and taking that political slant, very few on a military slant. And now we have something on the record of a personal slant. And it would have been good to have more, but that you can only start on a small scale. And it would be great to compare and contrast some of the peace villages now than from their cultures and how they've evolved since 1989 differently. That would be very good. On the methodology side, and we didn't write much about the methodology because we wanted it to be a general book. And if we wrote pages of methodology and justification of methodology, a lot of people would throw the book in the rubbish bin. So I think there's not more than a page of methodology, but I hope that this methodology of narrative, focus group, can be used on other projects, other subjects, other topics by researchers in the future and keep narrative research going. The reason we put the focus groups in, because we worry that being one or two people acting as a mental filter to filter out the meaning and the emotions, that a focus group acts as a trap. You know, I come from the chemistry, so we're able to trap all these little bits of information using a focus group. We found out a few things. We found that focus group had to be attuned to the culture and the language, and then we found that it's not just the language. We found that people who translate Mandarin into English had to be part of that generation, or at least an appreciated generation, and part of the same culture. So a language is not a language. It has all these nuances in it that only a speaker who understands the history can understand. And that's why the first 4 chapters are there. Without those first 4 chapters, one's going to have difficulty in understanding the actual narratives themselves and the cultural.
Okay, so I guess with that, I guess we can declare. Oh, Maria, are you back? Do you want to finish? Do you want to finish what you said, or what you were saying?
You're muted.
Oh, sorry, I unless I was cut out.
Yeah, you were cut off like I think about
just
15
repeat what
seconds.
I said. I hope it can be, the methodology there can be used by future researchers.
Okay.
I think it would be remiss of me to say a few words, a word of thanks for a few people who make this project possible, because as you know, me and Murray got into this project thanks to Lim Teck Gee, and also to Professor Diana Wong, who actually introduced me to Dr. Lim and all that, but also to New Era University College, where I was teaching, and to the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Mok Sun Chong, because he put me in touch with my eventual sponsor, Mr. Liao Chongbing, who is well known among the cadres as well. He's a friend of theirs. And he was very interested in this project because he wants somebody to chronicle this. Again, like Murray, he wants somebody to record this history. So thanks, Mr. Liao. As we complete this project along the way, we had to thank the people of the Friendship Village, members of people who both on and off record assisted us, and also the Friendship Association, the Phoenix Feng Huang, and also the Rainbow Association Cai Hong. So I think some of them are here today. And also to some independent scholars, for example, C.C. Chin from Singapore, he offered some insights and advice and all that. Also to my fellow colleagues in the University College who given up some of their precious time in proofreading and giving some ideas and discussion and all that. And of course to my wife and son who put up with me running off to Thailand without them. And with my son asking, and I wrote in my introduction like, "Where's Daddy? He's in Thailand." And then he thought he's going to Thailand, and actually he didn't end up going there. So I think I need to say all this to put it on record that and also of course last but not least, we must thank Pak Chong for agreeing to publish. It was for him to take the project, right? And also to people who've been with me along the way and all that. It's been quite a journey. And of course to Murray, who has been my only way of transport around, and for showing me, and his wife for showing me Thai culture as we learn, right? So Murray, if you want to say anything, it's your turn.
No, thanks. I think you've got everybody, and I'd like to.
Mr. Liang, we forgot
the second thing. Sorry,
we forgot to thank Mr. Liang from Khao Nam Kang.
Oh yes, yes, and also Pat Chong. I know this was not an easy book to publish. You know, can it sell? Will it sell? But I think long term it will. I think up in Betong, it's a big tourist section, so a lot of people will buy it there once they go and see the complex and they become impressed by it. Natalie and all the crew at Gurab Budaya 2 times now, 3 times, 3 books
Forgot
now.
to thank Natalie.
And finally, let's not forget
Janice.
Carolyn, who helped with the translations and the editing. She did a lot of work, was a vital part of the whole project. And for Jason for being existing in the form that you were in to enable this project to happen. Without somebody like you to have the knowledge of history and then the mastery of both English and Mandarin, no way this project could have been done. Thanks.
I forgot to thank a few more people, so there's a lot of people to thank. Caroline Kaur, who is our English editor, she ran through the book. She's not here, she's in Penang, hiding there. And also, just to let you know, there is a Mandarin version. 这里有中文版, right? And it is, I would say, artfully translated by, there you go, by Jing En, who is sitting over there. You know, she's a Chinese translator. She did a wonderful job. So if you want to read, and this is something I told Marie, and something, sorry Jason, I'm taking your time. Our interviews were done in Mandarin, but our research and writing was done in English. And so if you want to read the actual flavor of the translation, you better be able to read Mandarin. I'm sorry. But if you want to have a better understanding of the whole argument, the English version is probably your best bet. So if I were you, I'll buy both to get a full flavor. All right, I'm helping Pat Chong here. All right, that's it. All right, anything, Marie?
No, that's thanks. Been a great day.
All right. Okay, so I guess with that we can declare Narratives from Piyamit, Life Stories at the End of the Revolution, officially launched.